What is up, everybody? No flipping secrets here. I'm Jesse. Today, I'm going to help you find the exact lead gen strategy you should use when starting wholesale real estate. We're going to be going over the exact strategies, the startup cost for each strategy, the cost per lead for each strategy, how many leads you'll get a month, how many leads it takes to get a contract, the cost of each contract, and then the most important part, the time that it takes to manage all of these strategies. Now, this video doesn't cover every lead gen strategy, but it covers a good portion of them that you would need just starting out wholesaling. The first strategy that we're going to go over is cold calling. This is the strategy that most beginner wholesalers start with, and this is where they spend most of their time just starting out. As far as the startup cost, there's really only two things that factor into the startup for cold calling. Number one is the dialer. So it really depends on which dialer that you use. I personally use Enzo dialer. What that is a 14-line dialer that you can call 14 different numbers at once. That will typically run you about $200. Now the next part of the startup cost includes skip tracing. So it depends on which software that you use. Some softwares that you use, like a CRM, will include free skip tracing. One of those softwares includes XLeads. So XLeads, depending on the plan, will give you 10,000, 25,000, or even 50,000 skip traces per month for free. So this, you could bypass individually skip tracing all of the numbers or using another outside software that doesn't also give you a CRM. Now, if we just use the example of Enzo dialer as well as XLeads, let's just say the basic plan. The basic plan of XLeads is $100 a month. This will cost you about $300 a month. So that'll get you the dialer as well as 10,000 records per month for you to cold call. So you'd be cold calling 10,000 people per month, which I think is sufficient when you're just starting out wholesaling. As far as the cost per lead goes, this really depends on how many leads you generate per month. Now, typically, you should be generating about 1 to 2 leads per day. So if you're generating 1 to 2 leads per day, that would bring you at 30 to 60 leads per month. Now, if you're spending $300 on the dialer and skip tracing or a CRM or whatever you're doing to get this data, that would bring your cost per lead of about $5 to $10 per lead that you get. So 30 to 60 leads per month, $5 to $10 each lead that you get. And that's really why beginner wholesalers start by cold calling, is because it's cheap and an effective way to get leads, especially when your cost per lead is only $5 to $10. How many leads does it take cold calling in order to get one contract? Every about 30 to 50 people that you call, depending on your experience, it could be lower than 30, it could be higher than 50, you should be getting one contract every month from 30 to 50 leads. As far as the cost per contract, if you're generating 30 to 60 leads per month, and it takes about 30 to 50 leads to get one contract, and you're spending about $300 every single month, your cost per contract should really just be about $300. So every $300 you spend, you should be getting one contract per month. Now that doesn't mean you'll get one deal per month, because there's fallout rates and things like that when you're getting a contract. The cost per contract is about $300. As far as the time that it takes to get all of these leads, typically you're going to be working about 7 hours a day to get 1 to 2 leads per day, 30 to 60 leads per month. So it's like a whole work schedule. So if people have outside jobs and then they come home and they start cold calling, if they don't get a contract within that first month, it's probably just because they're not putting in the hours that they need to per day. So if they're putting in 3.5 hours a day, expect it to take probably 2 months to get a deal. The next strategy that we're going to be going over is SMS. This is really the lazy but effective way to get a deal. Now, SMS recently has been a little harder to get a deal because of different rules and regulations, depending on what state you're in. But I closed a $30,000 deal back in January here in my local market in Denver, just from one text that I sent to someone that costed 1 penny. as far as the startup cost goes, number one, what you're gonna need is a CRM. This is gonna handle all of the contacts that come to you whenever you text them and they're interested in selling their property. Next, you're gonna need to spend money on skip tracing. So if you pull a list, you need to skip trace those numbers in order to get the phone numbers. That costs money. But if you use something like X-Leads, they give you the CRM plus skip tracing all in one package together. Lastly, what you're gonna need, it's not free to text, so you're gonna need to spend money on texting. Now with X-Leads specifically, it costs about 1 penny per text. So if you get the basic plan, you get 10,000 records. If you spend 1 penny per text, it's gonna cost about $100 per month just to text 10,000 people. Now, as far as the cost per lead goes, there's 2 things that we need to take into account when we're calculating this. Number one is the software. Something like X-Leads, the basic plan is $100. Next, texting, again, isn't free. It costs about 1 penny per text. So if you spend $100 on X-Leads, that gets you 10,000 records per month times 0.01. That would also cost you an extra $100. So total it costs $200. You could generate 20 to 60 leads per month, which brings your cost per lead of around $3 to $10 per lead. Now, as far as how many leads should you get doing SMS in order to get 1 contract, it's about how many leads you're gonna get per month. So it's gonna be around 20 to 60 leads per 1 contract. Now, this depends on the data that you're using. It depends on the location that you're doing it. Some states are better for SMS, some states are not. So really it all depends on your market and the exact text blast that you're sending, the message that you're sending. This is all really dependent on the automation that you're doing inside your CRM when you're sending out that text blast. There's a couple variables that go into your cost per contract when doing SMS. Again, it depends on the state that you're doing it. It depends on your message. There's a little more niche things that you need to do in order to get SMS to be really effective. But your cost per contract should really be between $200 to $600. Now, that covers between 1 month and 3 months. If you are text blasting 10,000 people per month, it should take between 10,000 to 30,000 texts total in order to get 1 contract. Now, if you upgrade your plan and say now you can send out 30,000 texts per month, then by all means you could do that. Then you could get a contract sooner, or you could get even multiple contracts instead of having to wait multiple months. As far as the amount of time that it takes per day to do this strategy, you are not physically sending out the text blast yourself, which is good. You can automate this whole thing and it'll just blast a message to everybody, right? But what the time it does take is sending out follow-up texts, which if you have an AI, I guess this can be bypassed. But if you want to send specific messages, you have to take time to send those messages. And then also if you want to get people on the phone, then you also need to schedule a time. That also takes time. So anyway, it's gonna take about 1 to 2 hours per day. Again, this is the lazy way to do it. This is like cold calling, but it takes less time, it's less effective, but it's cheaper, it's lazy, right? Now the next strategy that we're gonna go over is like cold calling, but you pay someone else to cold call for you. Now you can hire someone out of the country from like Mexico or Egypt or the Philippines that will call your lists for you. So this drastically changes the amount of time that you're spending on each strategy, right? Because if you have someone else calling all of these leads for you, then you don't have to spend your time generating. You can now spend your time closing. Now, the startup cost, because you're hiring someone else, now you have an employee, the startup cost is quite a bit higher than cold calling and SMS. There's 3 things that we need to take into account when starting up VAs. Number one, the biggest cost, obviously, is the VA itself. This costs about $1,000 per month just for the VA. Next is a dialer. If you want your VAs to be calling at the same efficiency that you would be calling, you should use the same dialer that you would also be using. So for example, Enzo dialer can call 14 lines at once. So I would say use Enzo dialer, obviously, right? So we have the VA plus the dialer is about $1,200 per month. Lastly, you need to take into account the cost of skip tracing. If you use something like X Leads, they give you free skip tracing whenever you sign up for a plan. Again, if you use the basic plan, you get about 10,000 records per month. That costs about $100. So if you use the VA plus the dialer plus software like X Leads, that will run you about $1,300 per month. So in order to get someone to call for you, in order to replace yourself and spend less time calling yourself, it's going to cost about $1,300 per month. Now again, the cost per lead depends on how many leads you're getting per month. If you're hiring out someone else to cold call for you, they're going to bring in about the same results that you would get calling yourself. So that would be about 1 to 2 leads per day, or 30 to 60 leads per month. If it costs you $1,300 to get a VA, a dialer with skip tracing, and you're bringing in about 30 to 60 leads per month, your cost per lead is going to be about $20 to $40 per lead. It's going to be more expensive than if you do it yourself, but you'll see how much time you're saving by taking out yourself from the equation and hiring out someone else to do that calling for you. How many leads does it take to get one contract? Now, if a VA is basically doing the same work that you're doing, they're calling about 7 hours per day, they're going to bring in about the same amount of results, except you're not doing the discovery calls, you're doing the closing calls. So, same thing. About 30 to 50 leads that you get from your VA, you should be getting one contract, which means about 1 to 2 contracts per month you should be getting from these VAs. Cost per contract. If you're getting about 1 deal per month, costs you $1,300, guess what your cost per contract is? $1,300. Every $1,300 that you spend, you should be getting at least one contract. Now, how long does it take per day for you to manage all of your leads and to get these deals? Now, if you're getting 1 to 2 leads per day, think about how long you're gonna be on the phone with these leads. Maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, right? But if you're spending about 15 minutes per lead, so you get 2 leads per day, that'll be about 30 minutes per day just spending time with your new leads. Then you also have people who didn't answer from yesterday and the day before, and then you have an appointment at 5 o'clock. So the time you should be spending each day is about 1 hour. Now, this can go down to 30 minutes. Say all of your leads are answering and you can get a hold of all of them and you don't have any follow-ups, then you're only talking to 2 people per day. But then say you're stacking up all of your appointments, you're stacking up people that didn't answer, then you're spending maybe 2, maybe 3 hours. But just on average, you should be spending about 1 hour per day just closing the leads that you're getting from these VAs.
So the next strategy we're going to go over is PPL, which is pay per lead. There are third-party companies that generate leads online where people input their information on a website or from VA calling, and you purchase that lead from that company, which is a little cheaper than some of the other strategies we're going to go over. So startup costs is basically just leads. So because you're buying individual leads, we recommend spending about $3,000 on leads. It doesn't mean per month. It could be in a 2-month span. But we want you to set aside about $3,000 because you're buying leads individually. $3,000. So next is cost per lead, which can vary dramatically depending on what company you purchase the leads from, how old the leads are, how if they're exclusive or non-exclusive. There are many different variables, but they can start at anywhere from $1 to 300 or more. 1 to 300. Next, we're going to go over how many leads you can expect. Anywhere from 10 to 3,000 leads. Now, of course, you're not going to speak to 3,000 people throughout the month, so you don't want to only purchase $1 leads. Those leads are good for practice, and there's deals in there, but you want to be right around the midpoint, say around $50 per lead. Now, the leads to contract ratio is anywhere from 20 to 100. And a lot of times you're going to fall somewhere in the middle. So this is assuming you're spending about $50 per lead. And it can definitely vary depending on the quality of leads that you're purchasing. But assuming you're spending about $50 per lead, you should fall somewhere between 20 and 100. Now, cost per contract can be anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. As you can see, if you're spending $3,000, that could take you a little longer to get the contract, as well as you could spend $3,000 and not get a contract. It just depends on your lead source. You could get unlucky. You could pick the wrong leads. So this number can also vary pretty dramatically. So as you can see, you could get 3 deals and you could get 0 deals, which is why PPL is a high risk, high reward strategy. So the time is also going to vary. It can go anywhere from 10 minutes per day to 5 hours per day, just depending on how many leads you're buying. If you're buying 3,000 leads, expect to be on the phone for 5 hours a day. If you're only buying 10 leads every 3-4 days, obviously you're not going to spend that much time on the phone. So next we're going to go over the strategy meta ads. Includes Facebook and Instagram. So far we've gone over outbound strategies, which is cold call, SMS, VAs, and to some extent PPL as well, because VAs have called them, you're reaching back out, etc. These meta ads are inbound. People are coming to you with a lot higher motivation. So next is startup costs, which really is your management costs for your ad campaign and your ad spend. So management can vary, starting at around $1,000 a month and can go as high as around $3,000 a month. If you're nickel and diming, you have a management company who's probably not going to help you much with your ad campaign, which will drive your cost per lead up. But if you spend a little more on a good Facebook management team, your cost per lead can come down and the quality goes up as well. So let's say you're spending $2,000 on an ad management company. We recommend you spend about $3,000 on ads, which is $5,000 total. So unlike PPL, which can vary and you can choose how much you're spending per month, this is kind of a fixed cost. So the management cost is really what's fixed. As you grow, you can increase your spend, but this is generally what we recommend starting out. So cost per lead is also going to vary depending on the management company who is in control of the quality of ads that are placed, as well as where you're targeting. Nationwide leads are going to be a lot cheaper, but if you geo-target to a specific county, state, city, the cost per lead is going to be quite a bit higher and you'll be right around that $150 mark. Generally, if you're doing something local, expect anywhere from $80 to $150. So at that $3,000 ad spend, if you're spending $80 to $150 per lead, you can expect 20 to 40 leads per month or around 1 lead a day. Now with meta ads, you need to expect that there's going to be a ramp up period. So your first month, these numbers might be a little different, but after the second and third month, you should be right on target to have 10 to 20 leads turn into a contract, because these leads come to you highly motivated. So early in your campaign, you're going to be closer to this number. But as the months go on, second, third, fourth month, you should be dialed in enough to where you're getting a 10-to-1 ratio. So cost per contract can be anywhere from $800 all the way to $3,000 per contract. 800 is assuming you have the best cost per lead and you're closing at the best ratio. And then the 3,000 numbers is if your cost per lead is the worst or the most expensive and you're closing at the worst ratio. But generally you're gonna fall somewhere in the middle, right around, I would say, $2,000 per contract. So I know this does seem pretty expensive, but what I've seen is inbound calls, people that are coming to you to sell their home, attract a higher assignment fee per contract. So for time, you're looking at anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour per day, and will definitely vary as well depending on appointments set, people that you've contacted or been able to reach maybe from days past. Again, your appointments can stack up, so this time can go up or down just depending on what's coming in. So the last strategy that we're going to cover is the sticky note strategy, which is self-explanatory. What you're going to do is drive to a neighborhood, find a distressed home, knock on the door. If they don't answer, you're going to leave a sticky note with a vague message and your phone number. This strategy is a good strategy when you don't have a lot of money to spend. It takes a lot more hustle, but is the lowest cost to get a deal. So as far as the startup cost goes, it's really just gas and your cost for sticky notes. So gas, if you're spending an hour driving a day, is in the month you might spend $150. Notes, sticky notes might cost you $50 a month. So your cost per lead is pretty much as low as it gets, as close to zero as you can get, because it's basically the cost of a sticky note. That's why this strategy is actually really good for people who are just starting out. So leads per month, we have at 10 leads per 1,000 notes left, which can also vary depending on the neighborhood that you're knocking, the distress level of the homes that you're choosing, investor activity. Many different variables go into this 10 per 1,000 notes. So leads we put at 10 to 20 per contract, but let me clarify. These are not just people who call you based on the vague message that you're leaving, which is purposefully vague, right? These 10 to 20 are people who want to hear out a cash offer on their home. So if you're leaving 1,000 sticky notes per month, you can expect one deal every 1 to 2 months. So cost per contract is anywhere from 200 to 400, depending on how many sticky notes you leave, how much gas you use, how far you drive, etc. So in order to leave 1,000 sticky notes per month, you're going to want to leave about 33 notes per day on doors. So this 1 to 3 hour is going to vary depending on how far the neighborhood is, how many doors you're knocking, from house to house, how long it takes to drive, etc.
Which strategy among all the strategies that we went over is best for you? Now, if you have the least amount of time, say you're constrained on time, you work 2 jobs or something like that, the best strategy for you is probably either to do a text blasting campaign that'll take you about 1 to 2 hours per day, or you hire some VAs, which will be about an hour per day, which means after work, say you get home at 6 o'clock, you spend 6 to 7 o'clock just setting appointments and closing those appointments.
Amongst all these strategies, if you have little to no money, then sticky notes is going to be your best go-to strategy, because you're only spending money on gas and sticky notes. So just however much time per day that you have to drive and find distressed properties, that's going to be the strategy for you, which is for little money, sticky notes.
If you have just a little bit of time per day, but you have a bigger budget, we would recommend you start with virtual assistants and PPL. Now, typically, that will run you $3,000 plus $1,300, about $4,300 per month. That's if you have a very finite amount of time, because you only spend about an hour on those VAs and then between 10 minutes to 5 hours on PPL. You get even lower than 10 minutes, you know? But really, if you have just a little bit amount of time, but you have a bigger budget, this is what we would recommend.
If you're in a situation where you have a lot of time but not a lot of startup money, we recommend going with a mixture of cold calling and sticky note strategy, because your startup costs entail a dialer, skip tracing, and then gas and the cost of sticky notes. This way you can spend about a full-time job, right? 7 hours here cold calling, which gives you the experience, and then 1 to 3 hours driving, knocking on doors and leaving sticky notes on distressed homes.
What pick do we recommend? If I'm gonna be honest with you, I think that you should do everything, basically. You should cold call, you should do SMS, VAs, PPL, med ads, sticky notes, everything, right? It's good to do a little bit of everything, and you can get lead sources from everywhere. But our overall pick for the best time and money value, I think, is a mixture of PPL and SMS. PPL is a little more expensive, but again, you could get those cheaper leads and maybe practice with those. And then you also have a cheap cost per lead for SMS, right? Only between $3 to $10 per lead. Now, a little disclaimer for SMS, you do have to get A2P approved. So what that means is the government is basically letting you text people. But that is a little bit of a process. But if you're starting out, I definitely do think that it's worth the time to get A2P approved for SMS text blasting, as well as doing PPL. Amongst all of the strategies that we've went over, the strategies that have the least amount of time or the least amount of money or our overall pick, the most important part is that you pick a strategy and you stick with it, you run with it. Now, this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. So you don't want to stick to PPL for 1 month, and if you don't get a deal, you give up. Or you stick to cold calling for 1 month, and if you don't get a deal, you give up. This is a marathon. It takes time to grow. And eventually, when you get that deal, that wholesale deal will change your life. So the most important part of this whole video is not the exact strategy that you use, but picking a strategy and sticking with it. Because every single one of these strategies works if you work it.
So we hope this helps, and one of these strategies is going to work for you. If you like this content, and if you like this type of information, let us know in the comments below, and please like, subscribe, and even share this with somebody who you think this would be beneficial for. And again, thanks for watching, and peace!